Oppenheimer studied the atom but found the path to longevity a very strange method. He was a man who shaped the modern world in ways he could never have fully anticipated. While the name Robert Oppenheimer, is most commonly linked with the Manhattan Project and the development of the atomic bomb, there's another side to this brilliant physicist that many have overlooked. Rumors circulated among his close acquaintances that he had stumbled upon an extraordinary method that could potentially prolong life. This is no simple tale of lab results or formulae. Rather, it is the story of one man's obsession with understanding energy not just on a cosmic or atomic level, but within his own body and mind. By the end of this narrative, there will be a surprising twist that could inspire you to see the world in a completely different way. Picture a young Oppenheimer at the dawn of his studies in quantum physics. The late 1920s were a thrilling time for physics, with new theories challenging old assumptions. While Oppenheimer immersed himself in the intricacies of atoms and particles, he also nurtured a quieter, more introspective side. When he was not with colleagues in intense discussions about quantum mechanics, he would slip away to read literature, study Eastern philosophy, or practice a peculiar set of mental and physical exercises that no one quite understood. Throughout his early years, Oppenheimer was known to have broad interests that extended beyond science. He wrote poetry, appreciated art, and had a keen fascination with spiritual traditions, particularly those of the East. His involvement with Sanskrit texts and his reference to the Bhagavad Gita became well known later in his career, but the seeds of this intrigue were planted far earlier. In these texts, he found cryptic hints of a path to self-awareness, a deeper understanding of life's energy, and possibly the key to longevity. How did a physicist renowned for splitting the atom become captivated by such intangible concepts? Perhaps the line between physics and philosophy was far thinner for Oppenheimer than for most of his contemporaries. The mathematics of quantum mechanics forced physicists of his era to confront the idea that observation itself affected reality. From there, it was not such a great leap for someone like Oppenheimer, whose mind was perpetually seeking unifying principles, to wonder if consciousness and the Buddhist vitality could also be harnessed, measured, or influenced in some fundamental way. He began exploring disciplines that, at the time, were considered arcane. Yoga was not as widely recognized in the West. Meditation was often dismissed as something exotic or even eccentric. Yet, behind closed doors, Oppenheimer delved into these practices, suspecting that they might reveal secrets analogous to those he was uncovering in quantum theory. The notion of focusing the mind so intently that it could alter bodily states fascinated him. And so, in the midst of a high-stakes scientific career, he quietly pursued a private path, searching for a gateway to better health, improved mental clarity, and yes, a longer, more fulfilling life. He was particularly taken with the concept of prana, which some describe as the life force or vital energy permeating all living things. Oppenheimer believed that if subatomic particles could be mapped, measured, and harnessed for power, perhaps the subtle energies within the human body could likewise be observed and intentionally influenced. He devoured ancient texts that describe breathwork, concentration, and mental discipline as vehicles for changing the function of a human organism. All this might sound lofty or speculative, but remember, Oppenheimer was anything but a dilettante. He maintained a rigorous scientific approach to even his most esoteric pursuits. He kept detailed notes on how certain breathing exercises affected his concentration, how his energy levels rose or fell after meditation, and whether certain foods improved his sense of calm or heightened it undesirably. Over time, he developed his own personal routine, one that integrated elements of yoga and mindfulness into a daily schedule that few outside his immediate circle ever witnessed. His professional life, meanwhile, catapulted him to positions of great responsibility. He was deeply involved in guiding theoretical aspects of nuclear research in the United States. By the time the Manhattan Project was in full swing, Oppenheimer was charged with leading a team of some of the brightest minds in the world at Los Alamos. Under immense pressure, coping with the moral weight of creating a devastating weapon, he somehow found pockets of time to continue his peculiar self-experiment. When his colleagues teased him about his absent-minded gaze or his tendency to quote Eastern texts, he would only smile mysteriously. Tension mounted as the project hurtled toward the first test of a nuclear bomb. The night before the Trinity test, Oppenheimer was visibly uneasy, torn between the excitement of discovery and the dread of unleashing a new kind of destruction upon the world. He retreated to his quarters for a few hours, and it is said that he spent that time in silent contemplation, perhaps engaging in the very breathing exercises he believed helped him remain centered. Even in the face of monumental stress, he had his method to calm the mind and steady the body. We often wonder how people like Oppenheimer, who stood on the precipice of catastrophic global change, managed the burden of guilt and anxiety. For him, it seems the combination of meditative practice, philosophical reflection, and physical discipline offered a kind of internal anchoring. While others might have collapsed under the weight of these events, Oppenheimer endured, albeit with lingering emotional scars. Yet he would later speak of an enduring sense of life, an appreciation for the interplay of forces within and around us that might only be gained through such intense introspection. Of course, the bomb was dropped. The world changed forever. Oppenheimer found himself a central figure in public debates, political entanglements, and moral quandaries. He faced the scrutiny of the Atomic Energy Commission, political opponents, and the general public. His security clearance was eventually revoked, and he withdrew somewhat from public life, though he continued to influence scientific discourse. Behind the scenes, he did not abandon his quest for what he called the synergy of internal energies. According to letters exchanged between him and a few close friends, Oppenheimer believed that his longevity method was not about immortality, but about maximizing the potential of each moment of existence. His approach was grounded in daily habits that aligned the mind, body, and what he believed to be a deeper spiritual force. If quantum mechanics revealed a hidden world of probability and wave functions, perhaps, by analogy, the body and mind harbored hidden capacities that could be liberated through discipline, focus, and understanding of the self. Let's pause here for a moment. Do you believe it is possible for an intense meditative or spiritual practice to significantly extend a person's life or improve their health to an extraordinary degree? Share your thoughts in the comments. Returning to Oppenheimer, we find that as he moved past the immediate fallout of World War II, he spent more time investigating the subtle effects of mind-body practices. His reading list included not only Sanskrit scriptures, but also scientific papers on neurobiology, stress response, and the emerging field of psychosomatic medicine. He was fascinated by the notion that the mind could influence bodily functions such as heart rate, blood pressure, and immune response. In an era when psychosomatic connections were just starting to garner serious attention, Oppenheimer was already looking for empirical evidence. Some accounts suggest that he became particularly interested in the pineal gland, which esoteric traditions sometimes link to heightened states of awareness. While we cannot say for certain how deep this interest went, rumors imply that Oppenheimer read widely on the subject, seeking to understand if there was a physiological correlate to mystical experiences described in ancient texts. If so, perhaps controlling or positively stimulating this gland could open doors to greater well-being and a slower aging process. At the same time, he remained a scientist at heart. He never let go of his penchant for rational inquiry. He would frequently express skepticism about any system of belief that claimed miracles without evidence. For him, the pursuit of longevity was just another aspect of understanding energy. He wanted to see if focusing energy inwardly could sustain vitality, just as nuclear energy, when harnessed properly, could generate immense power. Yet, this personal search was overshadowed by the public persona of Oppenheimer as the father of the atomic bomb. His involvement in national security debates and his moral reflections on nuclear weapons shaped the latter part of his career and life. Still, people close to him said he never wavered in his commitment to his strange regimen. Some described it as daily yoga postures, breath work, and a long period of seated meditation, followed by dedicated reading and reflection. He was known to keep a small notebook where he jotted down insights or experiences he had during these practices. What did he gain from all this? Longevity is not simply about how many years one lives. Rather, it might be measured in the quality of those years, the sense of well-being and presence. Oppenheimer carried a certain calmness around him, even though he was haunted by what his work had brought forth. This inner calmness could be attributed to many factors, but it is tempting to see it as a direct outcome of his unusual daily practices. He lived until 1967, passing away at the age of 62. By modern standards, that is not extremely old, though for someone who endured enormous stress, smoked heavily for a period, and faced a barrage of political battles, it is still a respectable lifespan. However, mere numbers might not tell the entire story. In some of his last recorded comments, he expressed a sense of acceptance, a deep understanding that everything in the universe is interconnected. He referred vaguely to the synergy of energies that form our reality, hinting that while his scientific career had explored the external world, his personal life had been a parallel exploration of the internal one. Critics might argue that if Oppenheimer truly discovered a path to radical longevity, it did not extend his life dramatically. But perhaps that was never the point. The strange method he uncovered was more about living deeply and meaningfully, even in the midst of chaos. The question remains, what exactly did this method look like? And how can we piece it together from the fragments of information we have today? If we reconstruct the details, we see a daily sequence something like this. Upon waking, Oppenheimer would spend around 15 to 20 minutes in silent meditation. He might then move through a series of slow, deliberate stretching exercises reminiscent of yoga. After that, he engaged in a practice of pranayama, breath regulation, which he believed activated a deeper awareness within. He took a light breakfast, often fruit or something equally simple, and maintained a mindful approach to his first meal of the day. Then it was on to his intellectual work. At midday, if he could, he would find a few moments to recenter. Sometimes this meant stepping outside to observe nature, or, if confined to an office, simply closing his eyes to revisit the breath. Late in the afternoon or early evening, he would devote another block of time to more involved practice, possibly chanting Sanskrit verses or reflecting on philosophical texts that discuss the nature of consciousness and reality. Before sleep, he practiced a final meditative session, seeking clarity and calmness. This was a space in which he believed the day's tensions could be released. Such a routine might not seem revolutionary today, given the popularity of meditation and yoga. But in Oppenheimer's time, these practices were far from mainstream, particularly among elite Western scientists. His willingness to embrace them and to integrate them in a disciplined way set him apart. It also gave him a mental edge when grappling with immense scientific and moral challenges. He once confided in a colleague that, in his view, the difference between ordinary living and truly extended living was the ability to experience time deeply. If each moment is rich with awareness, if you are fully present, then even 62 years can feel expanded. Meanwhile, someone who lives to 90 but spends their days in autopilot mode might feel that life passes by quickly and superficially. For Oppenheimer, the perception of time was malleable, just as quantum physics taught that our observations can alter the behavior of particles. It is also worth considering that Oppenheimer's method may have been incomplete or constantly evolving. Just as his understanding of quantum mechanics grew over time, so too might his approach to longevity have been a work in progress. He was learning from multiple traditions, testing them against his own experiences, and refining what worked. In some of his writings, he made references to the fact that his Western upbringing and scientific rigor occasionally clashed with Eastern philosophical concepts, and he had to work through those conflicts. By the final years of his life, friends noted that he had an almost prophetic aura. Though tired and worn by smoking and various pressures, he could still gather his mental faculties in moments of striking brilliance. Visitors often found him perched on a chair, gazing out a window, seemingly lost in thought. Then he would turn and speak with the clarity of someone half his age. Perhaps the combination of mental discipline and philosophical exploration allowed him to remain sharp, even as time and stress took their toll on his body. At this juncture, you might be wondering if you could integrate some aspect of Oppenheimer's strange method into your own life. Is it even relevant in the modern era? Meditation, breathwork, and yoga are widely practiced now, but many still dismiss them as mere relaxation techniques without seeing the deeper potential for transforming both mind and body. Could we, by following a disciplined practice, find our way to better health, a calmer mind, and maybe even a more profound experience of time and existence? That is the question that arises when we examine Oppenheimer's lesser-known journey. His method was not about grandiose claims or seeking fanfare. He did not publish a treatise on it. If anything, he kept it low-key, as though it were a personal refuge from a world that could be cruel, chaotic, and misinformed. He knew that had he openly advocated such ideas, especially during the tense political climate of the Cold War, he might have invited further criticism or been accused of unpatriotic or unscientific behavior. Instead, he pursued his personal quest quietly, sharing only bits and pieces with those he trusted. In reading about Oppenheimer's life, one might easily miss these subtle details in the avalanche of historical accounts focusing on nuclear weapons, espionage, and political drama. Yet, hidden in letters, in recollections of close friends, and in anecdotal stories that have surfaced over the decades, we can see a picture emerging of a scientist who believed that the same curiosity and precision applied to the atom could be applied to the human spirit. The unexpected revelation is not that Oppenheimer found a magic potion for immortality. Rather, it is that a man so closely associated with destructive power was, in his private life, searching for something akin to inner peace and sustained vitality. The path he found was indeed strange to most of his peers, a blend of Eastern wisdom, physical discipline, and meditative focus. The longevity he sought might have been less about adding years to life and more about adding depth and awareness to every moment. Before we reach the final concluding thoughts, take a moment to consider this. If you were in Oppenheimer's position, dealing with monumental ethical decisions, intense professional demands, and personal doubts, would you have sought refuge in a daily spiritual practice? Or would you have attempted to compartmentalize your life, separating the scientific from the personal, the moral from the intellectual? Share your reflections in the comments. In our fast-paced age, it is tempting to see longevity as a purely biological quest, better diets, medical advancements, and supplements. Oppenheimer's approach hints at a more holistic vision, harnessing the power of the mind, fostering deep self-awareness, and aligning one's behavior with a philosophical understanding of existence. He believed in living not just longer, but more fully, more consciously. In the end, Oppenheimer passed away from complications related to throat cancer. Some might say his longevity was limited by his smoking habit, a stark reminder that no single method can offset entirely the damage of detrimental behaviors. Yet, even with that, he endured significant stress and political strife and still managed to contribute profoundly to scientific thought. The question remains, had he not pursued those quiet practices of breath work, yoga, and meditation, would he have succumbed earlier to the weight of despair or illness? We cannot know for certain, but it is plausible that his internal discipline fortified him against the onslaught of life's extremes. Now for the twist that we promised at the outset. The real revelation is that Oppenheimer's quest for longevity was about an inner awakening that could run parallel to any external scientific achievement. He recognized that if the universe is, at its core, an interplay of energies, then human life is an extension of that interplay. By harmonizing the forces within, a person might live not only with greater health, but also with a deeper connection to all that surrounds them. This perspective forces us to re-examine how we define a successful life. Is it measured by accolades, scientific discoveries, or political influence? Or is it determined by the quality of our day-to-day existence, our peace of mind, and the richness of each moment? For Oppenheimer, the line between those definitions was blurred. He strove for scientific greatness, but he also yearned for personal equilibrium. In a world that often prizes outward achievements over inward understanding, his strange method stands as a reminder that we might be missing half the equation. Yes, we can harness atomic power, explore space, and create marvels of technology, but if we never learn to master our own selves, are we truly evolving? Oppenheimer's life offers a cautionary tale and an inspiration. The devastation of nuclear weapons, contrasted with his personal pursuit of harmony, is a stark testament to the duality of human capability. He lived a life that was extraordinary, fraught with controversies, triumphs, and regrets. Yet woven through it all was a persistent spiritual thread. By acknowledging that we are both powerful and fragile, capable of great discoveries and grievous harm, Oppenheimer's story invites us to look inward. Perhaps the path to genuine longevity, or at least to a more meaningful life, lies in reconciling our external ambitions with an inner sense of peace. To conclude, remember that Oppenheimer never claimed to have perfected this method. He was a traveler on the same road many of us walk today. Try to make sense of existence, to live fully, and to reconcile personal beliefs with professional obligations. If his experiences teach us anything, it might be that the search for longevity is as much a spiritual and psychological journey as it is a physical one. So here is the final question for you to ponder and answer in the comments below. If you could devote just 15 minutes a day to a practice that harmonizes your mind, body, and spirit, what would that practice look like for you?